Dear respected teacher, dear beloved community, today is the 26th of June in the year 2025. We're in the Upper Hamlet of Plum Village on the last day of our retreat for scientists. It feels very nice to be sitting here, and I hope and trust that it feels as pleasant for you as it does for me. I look around the hall and I see so many familiar faces, so many friends, and I remember last summer, I think it was in August, some of us were invited to join the Mind and Life Europe Summer Research Institute in Pommaia in Italy, and there's some friends here from there. And on the last day, there was a circle of kind of, I can't remember what the idea was, but it was sort of like inspirations, ideas, collaborations. And I think I put up my hand and sort of said, would anybody be interested in having a retreat for scientists in Plum Village? And there was some enthusiasm. So we kind of launched into this, whilst there's some part of me that was thinking, I actually can't do this. There's no way I can, fit this in. I can't plan it all. I can't figure it out. All the logistics, and so and that was true, and yet we're here. So how did it happen? Because I didn't have to do it alone. So I really want to kind of just name the sometimes visible, sometimes less visible presence of so many others. The organizing team. A large organizing team of brothers and sisters from Upper and Lower Hamlet, whom, many, many times, big shout out to them. Many, many times I said, I can't deal with this, can you help me? And then I got it. And they did got it, because otherwise we also wouldn't be here. And many others, Joanna also has been amazing. Indefatigable. Many, many times I also said to her, I can't deal with this, can you help me? And she said, got it. And Ellie and Nyo as well, helping so much with the pre and post surveys, which I hope many of you will have seen and filled in, and our wonderful panelists, who were also very compassionate when I didn't answer their emails and when I didn't tell them what the panels were about, and so on and so forth. And probably many, many others that I'm forgetting. I also just want to name the presence, sometimes visible, sometimes less visible, of all the volunteers helping in so many ways. Especially our cooking volunteers. Came somewhat at the last minute, and I know have been providing amazing food for everyone to enjoy, and they do it joyfully. Every time I go past the kitchen, they're all smiling, and then all of our brothers and sisters who are also helping in so many ways, preparing the hamlet so beautifully. All the grass was cut and everything was cleaned and prepared, and all the flower beds were made beautiful, and the toilets and rooms are cleaned and the beds made, and I know for the sisters too in Lower Hamlet, and also our brothers and sisters are cooking, cleaning throughout the retreat. And so it's really a collective manifestation, this retreat. It's only possible thanks to everyone working together. And that's a very beautiful thing. And really, it only happens because of all of you, right? If nobody registered, then we would be sitting here kind of, okay, let's talk about science. We're talking to ourselves. And really, yeah, I mean, the kind of, this moment of sitting here with you all is also because you all came. So thank you for your trust, thank you for your stepping into the partially known, partially unknown phenomenon of this week. And yeah. It's a beautiful celebration and realization of many dreams of many people, maybe all our dreams. We've all dreamed of this in one way or another. So today, I'm going to do my best to respond to some wishes that have been expressed. And just to give you an idea, I was asked by several people to to explain the ultimate nature of reality. So, no biggie. So, okay, what shall I do after that? So then I had another request yesterday. So, can you also do non-self? Like, okay, sure, let's do that. I mean, really? I'm kind of serious. Like, do you really expect me to tell you? Like, really? I had a yes. I see a no. I see some yes. It's a serious question. Yes. You think yes? How many yeses? Put up your hand. We got a good number of yeses. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. But it's when I first came to Plum Village 26 years ago, I also had this wish very strongly, and I really did expect Tai to tell me. I really did. And then Tai kept talking about being aware of your feet, being aware of the breath, feeling your, looking into your relationship with your mother, with your father. It's so annoying. Like, just why do we have to waste our time doing that? I want you to tell me the ultimate nature of reality. I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me something that can't be said. But it's really interesting because I grew up with the idea. I read, as probably many of you did, Stephen Hawking's and many others, and it's all like about the search for the guts, the grand unified theories, right? Or the TOEs, theories of everything, TOE. And I really thought that's what we were, at some point, sooner or later. Many physicists have promised this, and some of them are still promising it, that we're going to have a grand unified theory or a theory of everything. And I thought that is the kind of form that an ultimate understanding should take, right? Theoretical. Or even in the realm of philosophy, or spirituality or religion, I was expecting an explanation, a description, a form of words. Right? Are you getting this? You see the problem? We want to replace the real with the abstract. And we think that will help. We think that will solve it. If I could just understand, if you could just tell me. So we really have to look at that. And we really have to allow ourselves to let go of that wish. Because whatever is said is less than this. How can I say this? The stuff, the texture of experience. Whatever you say about it is a compression, is a lossy compression. So we need to be very careful of theories and concepts and descriptions, and language in general. Beware the map. I've said it before, and I'm going to keep saying it, because we're addicted. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you. And yet, we are in this sort of strange moment in our history where I get the sense that there's a feeling that kind of reality is up for grabs a little bit. There are many, many kind of competing descriptions or ways of understanding reality. And just to name a few, of course, we have physicalism or scientific materialism, right? The idea that there is an external physical universe made of matter, whatever that is, right? Which matter and energy, which obey physical laws, which are the same everywhere throughout time and space, except perhaps in the early moments of the Big Bang. And you know the rest. And so that's an account. It's an account which does not mention consciousness. To me, that's a bit of a problem, right? If we're trying to have a theory of everything, a description of everything, of the nature of reality, this is a pretty glaring omission. So I don't know if you've noticed, but everything, and I mean everything that we experience about this so-called objective external world is an experience. I don't know whether that's obvious. So how do you take consciousness out of that? I mean, just look at what you are looking at now, the field of your experience now, what you are seeing, hearing, feeling, maybe even tasting, smelling. You are looking at your own experience. Right? And sometimes in Buddhism we say, we train ourselves to look at the world as ourselves. And I remember first hearing that and thinking that's quite remote, that sounds difficult. I have to kind of reorganize all of my thinking. But really look at it, like objectively, with scientists, right? We're supposed to be objective. Look at it and realize that this is right now my experience. Do you really think that your experience is not you? Do you really think that your experience is not part of you? How could your experience not be part of you? That would be very strange. So if your experience, which is what you're experiencing, is part of you, then you are looking at you. Because this I'm pointing this way, you have to point this way. This is your experience, happening now. It's part of you. Interesting. To me, that's interesting. So we have physicalism. I hope we've just dealt with that. But we also have, these days we have panpsychism. So there's another attempt to sort of say, okay, we do need to account for consciousness. So maybe everything is conscious. So oddly, it's, to me, well, there are many different kinds of panpsychism, so I don't want to cast aspersions, but there are at least some versions that are very close to materialism. It's actually kind of like matter with another property called consciousness. Right, so it's still atoms and electrons, protons, neutrons, quarks, whatever, but now they have an extra property like charge and spin, but this one's consciousness. I don't find it satisfying, but it's interesting that it's had a big resurgence in the last few years. We also have idealism. So idealism is another kind of everything is consciousness or everything is in consciousness, but with a different flavor. And then we have simulation theory. You know that one? Silicon Valley loves this one. So we're living in a simulation, and maybe we're living in a simulation inside another simulation, and we don't know if there's a sort of base layer of that stack of simulations. And some people really, really think that, they actually think that they can sort of prove that this is the case. So anyway, I'm not really here to sort of discuss or debate these different theories, but just to point out that it's interesting to me that after a solid century of scientific materialism, more or less, we're now, it's kind of not looking so convincing anymore. And these other kind of sometimes earlier ways of understanding and thinking are coming back. And we're trying again, we're kind of asking these big questions again. What is the nature of reality? And we're looking for an answer. We have, and many people sort of come to Buddhism and say, well, what's the Buddhist answer to this question, the nature of reality, which is why I came to Plum Village the first time round. And it took me a long time to, I think I heard it, but then it took me a long time to really understand, and then an even longer time to actually accept that Buddhism in its kind of purest form does not propose an answer. So in one way of understanding Buddhism is the removal of these views and concepts. But it doesn't seek to then replace these views and concepts with a better view or concept. And this is really important. So at some point I started thinking of this as a kind of radical empiricism. And then I discovered that William James had already got there, a good 100 years ago. So this is also not new. And it's, in a sense, it's also phenomenology. Someone also asked me the other day, are you going to do phenomenology? And I said, we're always doing phenomenology. So what is phenomenology? It's also ideally the discipline of suspending beliefs, notions, conceptual structures about the nature of experience and experiencing it as in a kind of in a way that's not mediated by beliefs, views, and concepts. Quite hard to do. It takes some practice, and that's also one way of understanding what this practice that we're doing is all about. When we say come back to the body, when we say bring our awareness to the contact of our feet with the ground. Some people, after a little while, if they hear that a few times and they hear Taiseng breathing in, I smile, breathing out, I enjoy, and they're like, okay, fine. But then what? No. There's no then what. Just keep doing that. Keep doing that and you will see. That's the challenge. See for yourself. But it's very hard. So we also try to help each other and do it. And it's easier together. So I like this idea of kind of radical empiricism, of coming back to look at the nature of experience, and not somebody else's experience, right? My experience, and not like my experience a week ago, but my experience right now. That's my laboratory. That's where I can experiment. That's where I can see what is going on. So in the rest of this talk, there will be things that I say that kind of might sound like metaphysics or ontology. It will really look and sound like I'm saying this is Buddhist metaphysics, but I really want you to remember it is not. These are all temporary tools that we use to remove other views. And in the end, we have to let go of even the tools, the removing views tools, because they will also get in the way. I remember Tai saying very early on, the Buddha said that the teachings are like a snake, and they can bite you. And I kind of didn't really, I was like, okay, yeah, fine, But I didn't really get it. But what he's really saying, like, be careful. These teachings are dangerous. Like, we use the teaching of non-self to help us remove the view of self, because we know the view of self can cause suffering. We observe that. It makes us small. It makes us... We suffer in countless ways, so we have this teaching of non-self to help us uproot that view and hopefully suffer less. But if you get attached to the teaching of non-self, that is a far worse suffering, because there may be no antidote. It's dangerous. And you might have met some people like that, been to a few too many retreats, and they start throwing around the non-self teaching. It can be kind of violent. Like, imagine if you're in a war zone, if your child has been killed, and somebody comes and tells you, oh, don't worry, there's no self. Why do you suffer? How does that help? That's not skillful, that's not wise, it's not compassionate. It's useless, it's worse than useless. You're making things worse. So we've got to be very careful with the teachings, especially with the teachings on the ultimate, the nature of the ultimate reality. They are the most dangerous. So, warning. So we're in dangerous territory. I see if I can make one thing clear, because I've also had this question in the last few days. And I talk about physicalism or scientific materialism, and I say I'm not so sure, about the objective existence of matter and energy and the laws of physics as a sort of, cosmos independent from consciousness. When I say I'm not sure about that, then people may assume something else very quickly. And this is the question I've heard is along the lines of, okay, so are you saying that none of this is real? That this doesn't exist? Or that it's all in our mind? No. I don't think I said any of those things. And I certainly never heard Tai saying any of those things. Right, so let's be careful not to substitute one thing with another thing. So we're just removing something, we're trying not to put something in its place. And it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, because it's going to make us uncertain, and that is just a sort of physiologically uncomfortable thing. But it's not bad. A little discomfort might be a good thing. So let's be comfortable with the discomfort of kind of not knowing again. Not knowing is wonderful. So I can look at this and say, I don't know. And then I have a chance. Yeah? Then the mind is a little bit open. So I'm not saying that this isn't real. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. It's pretty real. I'm also maybe not saying that it exists. But if I remove the idea of existing, I don't replace it with the idea of not existing. Anybody know the answer? I've removed the idea of being, right? I'm saying this, it cannot be by itself as an entity, as a separate entity. But I'm also saying that it's not in the category of non-being, where we can all see it. Interbeing. Right answer. Temporary answer. Okay? Be careful with that one too. It's also an instrument. So we use the instrument of interbeing to help us be freed from our addiction to the categories of being and non-being. But this happens all the time. When we say there's no this, right? No self, as in no separate self. It's in a way it's already misleading, because so I like sometimes saying that with the flower, instead of saying it's empty, because then people substitute empty for non-existent, or they think, so there's nothing. No, it's empty of only one thing, which is separateness. So maybe empty is or a little misleading. I like sometimes saying non-separateness. It is non-separateness. There is no separateness. And that's much easier to see, because, again, we sort of check with our radical eyes of radical empiricism, and you look and you see, this is in my experience. So how can it be separate? It's in your eyes. It's in your visual consciousness. Where do you find separateness? I don't find it. It's like, try to look at it and at the same time take it out of yourself. It's like, I don't know, maybe you're a better surgeon than I am, but I don't have a scalpel fine enough. It's like, it's in me, not separate. Not to mention the sun. the rain, time, space, the evolution of life. You can't take out any of those things from this. Any one of them out, it collapses. It cannot stand. So what we find is non-separateness. But that's also not metaphysics. It's so tricky. So if there is any kind of metaphysics, it's a metaphysics of not knowing, or a metaphysics of refusing to know. And you have to be stubborn. And the mind wants to grasp onto knowing very quickly. It's like, oh, I got that now. Yeah. But you have to refuse. Say, no, that is, again, concept. It's just a Buddhist concept. A prettier concept. Don't trust it. Come back to the direct experience. You have like a billionth of a second before your mind jumps onto it and starts naming and categorizing. We try to stay there. It's not so easy. So we have a metaphysics of not knowing or refusing to know, and maybe on the way to that there's a kind of practice of unknowing. So I'm noticing that I quickly start to know things, and I'm aware of the danger of that, and so I'm going to practice unknowing. I'm going to practice dissolving what it is that I think I know. And I think that might be safer. Probably also dangerous. Let's see. Where do we go from here? Now we're really going to get in trouble. Big trouble. I'm going to give you some maps. And I said, we're in the business of removing the maps. But here we go. We're going to give you maps anyway. And maybe these maps can help remove some other maps. So there is in the Buddhist teaching something called the historical dimension. Also known as the conventional truth or the relative truth. And that is the one that we're kind of used to. That's the one that we usually deal with, where I am me and you are you. Right? We have different names, different passports, different personal histories, different parents, different nationalities, characteristics, We appear to be different, separate. Right? We also have all kinds of categorization, right? I'm human, I'm not flower. Right? I'm human, I'm not tree. And tree is tree, tree is not sun. Sun is sun, tree is tree, cloud is cloud, rain is rain. That's sort of the normal way of going about things, and in that world we find also causality, so things happen because other things happened, and that's fine. It's not bad, it's good, right? I was saying to someone the other day, like if you want to not get run over in the street, it's very helpful. Like if you see the car coming at 80 kilometers an hour and you say, I'm one with the car. Well, you might be. Yeah. Might be a little bit too much one with the car. So beware. Sometimes historical dimension thinking, perceiving is very, very helpful. Okay, that's car. This is human. Human is a little bit fragile. Car's moving fast. I'm going to stay on the side of the road. Very practical. It has to do with survival, has to do with our evolution. It's just how we navigate the world. It's very useful. But we also may have noticed that it can make us suffer. It makes us feel alone. We don't really like to feel so separate, so disconnected. We also can kind of make the disconnection even worse if we think, as I did when I was growing up. I learned to think I am a semi-stable pattern of neural activity, which is already kind of saying I don't know, that was normal for me. I don't know about you, but that was like baseline, So that means somehow I'm my brain, or I'm not even my brain, I'm like brain activity. And so I already disconnected myself from my body. I was already kind of disowning my body. I am this, I'm not that. So if there are feelings, it's okay, I can disregard them, they're not important. Just messy biology, forget about it. And that all seemed to be fine until my mother died. And then it wasn't fine. I tried to rely on it. I tried to say, well, she's also a semi-stable pattern of neural activity. Brain activity has ceased, so she no longer exists. Right? And it's all, deterministic interactions of matter and energy since the Big Bang anyway. So none of it matters. There is no such thing as meaning. Meaning is an artifact of, human creation and delusion. Nothing means anything. It's all just, random interactions of particles, so who cares? It's what I was saying, looking at my mother's body in the ICU. I thought that made sense. I didn't know. I didn't know better. Of course, it came with a lot of pride and arrogance and certainty. I didn't know. It was like I was stabbing myself with these beliefs, with these notions. I was hurting myself. I was hurting my father, who was standing next to me, weeping, trying to help me connect. So he was like, no, but the body, don't dismiss it. Yeah, she's dead, but that's this is the body that brought you into this world. This is the body that held you, that showed you how to love. Don't disregard it. Don't say it's nothing. Don't say it's meaningless. Don't be too sure. But I was too sure. And so I numbed myself with these beliefs, with my scientific ideology, for as long as I could. I kept all those feelings, all the grief suppressed until I came here. And I came here thinking, I wasn't thinking I'm going to come here to resolve my grief, or to mourn my mother. I was thinking I'm coming here to learn about the ultimate nature of reality and to try to figure out, is it scientific materialism or is it some wacky, woo, magical mysticism, telepathy, levitation, I don't know, altered states of consciousness. That's why I thought I was coming, but the more I look at it, the more I realize that there was something in me that was bringing me here that I didn't even know about. So, historical dimension, good, but limited. And so we also propose another way of looking, which we can call the ultimate. And this is where we get into problems. Because if I say ultimate dimension, this is the mistake I made. I thought, okay, that's the metaphysics. You're saying this is ultimate, this is the ultimate nature of reality. I just superimposed. I heard ultimate, and I was like, okay, ultimate nature of reality, got it. That's what we're looking for. Tell me about that. That's interesting. That's the thing I want to know about. So beware. Maybe that's not what it is. I'm also not sure, but my sense is more and more, for me, I find it more helpful to kind of, again, refuse the urge towards metaphysics or ontology or description of the nature of reality. So rather, I want to remind myself that there is something fundamentally unknowable, unsayable, and mysterious, and I want to keep it mysterious because mysterious is so much more interesting. Like if I know it, if somebody told me and then I told you and we were like, okay, that's it, we're done. And it's so boring. Yeah, then what? Just walk around knowing it. I know it, I know it, I know it. I can't think of anything worse. So refuse to know. And instead, we can understand these two teachings as two ways in which this ultimately completely mysterious, whatever it is, appears to us. Right? So there's something about the way we are constituted which makes it such that there are at least two fundamentally different ways that this mysterious nature of whatever it is manifests to us or appears to us. Okay. So there's one way of looking and thinking and seeing and being and walking around and not getting run over by cars in which we perceive things as separate and outside of each other. But there's something about the way we are constituted which is such that we can also have the experience that things are interconnected and inside of each other. Right, so I can look at the flower and I can see the sun. I can see the sun in the flower. I mean, I'm not making this up. This is not poetry. I can see the sun in the flower. I can see the rain in the flower. And we're going to get into this question of imagination a little bit later, because it's to some extent imagination, but with training, something happens. Something begins to happen. So we kind of train ourselves to look again. And where do we look to find this interconnected experience? We look here. You look into the historical dimension. You look closely enough with the eyes of a scientist. Right? You look deeply enough, and what you find is only interconnection. It's only interdependence. But remember, not as a theory of everything, but as an experience, as a way of perceiving. Okay. So, we can also draw some parallels between these two ways of thinking, ways of knowing, ways of speaking, ways of perceiving, ways of experiencing, which may be partly helpful. So let's put the ultimate here. I like to put the ultimate on the left because maybe the right hemisphere finds it easier to experience the world in terms of the ultimate. And we put the historical on the right because the left hemisphere seems to like looking and knowing at things in terms of separateness, categorization, and so on. So there's a wonderful physicist some of you may have heard of called David Bohm, and he coined two words, which he called the implicate order and the explicate order. And Tai would very often connect these. So in the explicate order, everything is explicited, it's outside, everything is outside of everything else, everything is parts and separate sort of pieces. And in the implicate order, everything is implicit in everything else. It's more like a kind of, he saw it as like a holographic nature of reality. So, you know, you look into any part, you find the whole. We can also think about, Tai would sometimes use words from Western philosophy, so for those of you who are familiar with that, it may be helpful. He talked about the noumenal and the phenomenal. And if these words are not familiar to you, don't worry about it. Right? It's not like by understanding these words that you're going to understand the nature of your experience. It's more like if you already know these words, then it might be helpful, just some more signposts that can be helpful. So phenomenal is just there are phenomena, they are separate, they are nameable, categorizable, and so on. And at the level of the noumenal, there is something else. We can think about the temporal. We think in terms of time. And maybe the eternal. I mean, this is just, like, don't take it too seriously, okay? But there's something that it is possible, again, in the realm of experience, to sort of experience eternity in the present moment. Right? And how do we do that? We do that by, again, looking into the historical dimension, and we see, like, okay, the whole of the past has conditioned and given rise to this moment, so there's a sense in which the whole of the past is in this moment. It is the nature of this moment. And this moment is the ground of the entirety of the future. Right, so this moment also has the whole future unfolding of whatever this is in it. Okay, so again, I don't say this as a theoretical thing, I say this as something to meditate upon, to see if we can touch in our experience. We can also think of the spiritual and the mundane, or the worldly. And I just, like, again, this is not so important, but may or may not be helpful. We can think about mythos and logos. So these are two ways of speaking, almost, two ways of thinking, knowing, and speaking that are fundamentally different and may be seemingly incompatible, but actually we've in our history we've used these two ways, and we used to know when to use which one, right? So we use logos, you know, when we need to get something done, build a house, dig a hole, you know, whatever we think is important. But when somebody dies, right? You don't stick in the realm of logos. It doesn't help. So we need to move in matters of spiritual experience, in matters of deep spiritual experiences. You can't, like, to use the language of logos is very strange. It's pointless. It's not helpful. So there we have these two ways of knowing and speaking. And for anybody who's read in McGilchrist, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, I promise, but maybe it's worth looking into the left hemisphere's way of bringing reality into being and the right hemisphere's way of bringing the world into being. And they are different. Okay. So part of our practice is to learn how to navigate and which one to apply when, right? Just as, when there are situations like I described when it would be very inappropriate to sort of try to use the words of the historical truth. There are other situations where it is inappropriate, and I've already said that a little bit, to use the language of the ultimate truth. It could be spiritual bypass. If you have somebody in front of you who has just experienced a loss or a trauma or, is in grief or is in immediate suffering, to start, going on at them about the ultimate truth and say, oh, everything's fine, we all everything's interconnected, don't be a victim. It's not okay. And we really need to check ourselves as a spiritual community, and maybe as the Plum Village tradition. Do we sometimes do this? Yes. We need to be very careful, and we need to be very compassionate. When somebody's in suffering, there are so many ways we can help them. Help them, first of all, just to be with the suffering, to calm it, to soothe it, just to accept, and you just say, I know you're suffering. That's why I'm here for you. I'm going to be with you in your suffering. You don't immediately start bashing them over the head with the ultimate truth. And it's not that I don't think the ultimate truth is useful to help transcending suffering. Of course it is, but first you've got to calm it down. You've got to soothe it. You've got to, I call it taking care of the mammal. We're also a mammal, and you just got to take care of the mammal. The mammal needs care, the mammal needs love, the mammal needs reassurance, needs acceptance, needs trust, needs connection. And maybe, when we're a little bit calmer, we've regained our stability, then we can start looking at the ultimate truth, because we also have to go there if we really want to free ourselves. Okay. So let's go on. So sometimes Tai would do a little move that he called the Zorro, right? And this is Zorro, okay? Ooh, we need a new pen for Zorro. So this is what Tai would refer to as the wisdom of adaptation. It is the many different kinds of practice that help us to traverse this apparent space or this apparent distinction between the historical and the ultimate. So these are practices, ways of looking that help us to bridge the apparent divide. And one basic way that we've already been learning about and that we can apply again and again in so many ways is to look with the eyes of interbeing. So interbeing is very skillful because it starts it still has being in it, right? So we start with things that appear to exist and appear to be separate, and we can say this is a flower, but then we start looking at it more closely and we discover everything else, right? So it's a way of looking, a way of investigating that helps us to move fluidly. And we can go in both directions. And then as we get more and more skillful with that, what we find, and sometimes Thai would draw this, is that the two are not two. Right? The historical and the ultimate. They're more like two facets, two appearances of one reality. So, again, don't get caught in the map. The other day we spoke about, or the other 2 days I think we spoke about Buddhist psychology and this beautiful model, the circle, 8 layers of consciousness. We had the 5 sense consciousnesses, mind consciousness, which is the 6th, manas, mentation, the kind of self-concept, which is the 7th, and still consciousness, which is the field of all the seeds, which is the 8th. And I don't know if anybody noticed in Ruth's presentation yesterday, she had more than 5 sensory consciousnesses, which is very cool. Did you count? Yeah, somebody counted 8. I also counted 8. There may be even more, but I think we had so the normal 5, like seeing, visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, somatosensory, but then also proprioceptive, right? The sense of you can close your eyes and you know where your limbs are in space. Interoceptive, which is actually probably multiple, but it's all the different sensory pathways that tell us the kind of homeostatic condition of our body. So it can be blood pressure, breathing rate, heart rate. We have osmo sensors, which measure the stress on our bones, and many heat, cold, pain, gentle touch, pinprick, many different sensory pathways, which can be summarized with this interoceptive. It's like the state of our body in the present moment. And then vestibular, right? That was the other one. So you can close your eyes and you also know where up and down is, right? We have this sense of balance. So that's nice. We can take a list and make it into a longer list. So instead of 8 consciousnesses now, we have 11. Right? Because there's the 5 sense consciousnesses now plus 3. So we have 8 sense consciousnesses, and then mind consciousness, manas, store, at least. And now we're going to see if we can get into some new territory. We don't often get to teach this because usually, all that store consciousness stuff, we sometimes do it on the last day. But since we already did it on the first day, that allows us to play and to go a little bit further. So I haven't heard this taught since Thai taught it in, I think last time I heard Thai teaching it was maybe 2006 in the neuroscience retreat. So we talk about modes and realms. How much room do I need? Okay, maybe I need a bit more room. So these are, is there a new marker by any chance? Sound team? These seem to be done. Oh, these ones are okay. So these are modes of cognition. And so again, not the nature of reality, nature of perception. Thank you. Oh, it's blue. Okay, I've already got a blue one. It's okay. Thank you. For some reason I like black, but blue is also good. That's my mind of discrimination. All right, so we have modes of perception, or modes of cognition. And there are, in the tradition, we identify three. And the first is direct. And this is interesting because most of modern science says that this is not possible. Right? We only have mediated, perception mediated by imperfect sensory organs. So this is interesting. True or not true? I don't know, but interesting. So in the mode of direct perception, this is a way in which we encounter reality with no discrimination, and no speculation, no mental map making, theory making, no conceptual intervention, no language, just direct. And if we think of the, maybe I'll just put it down here for reference. We have our nice model with the 5 or 8 sensory consciousnesses, right? And this is the 6th, this is the 7th, and this is the 8th. And these are the 5. So if I say the 5, the 6th, the 7th, or the 8th, you know what I'm talking about. So the 5 sense consciousnesses, or 8, according to the teaching, have the possibility of being in the mode of direct perception when they are not collaborating with mind consciousness. So they operate directly with store, without the intervention of mind. So the intervention of mind is the naming, identifying, speculating, inferring, and so on. And also without the intervention of the 7th. Let's do a little experiment. Quite often when we feel something, let's say you have a sensation in your body. I hope you have a sensation in your body right now. Can you find a sensation? It might be pleasant, might be unpleasant, it might be neutral, it might be mixed. There might be a little bit of tension, a little bit of something somewhere. As you feel that, see if you can notice the way in which, kind of unconsciously, there's a feeling of this is my feeling. That's the normal way of feeling. And now, as you are feeling that, see if you can, to whatever extent, take away the notion or the assumption that it is my feeling and just experiencing it as feeling. There is feeling. So, it's possible. Quite subtle, quite difficult. The my feeling bit comes in very fast, and you might touch for a moment the just feeling,
And then very quickly, it gets reappropriated in my feeling. I like, I don't like, I want more, I want less, I don't want anything. I wanted an ice cream. I didn't order this. I ordered French fries. You brought me a sandwich. We have all kinds of things that follow on from this my. Once you have my, you have a whole chain of confusion. So it's very interesting to experiment with, can I feel just feeling without appropriation? So this might be a kind of beginning of experience of this possibility of direct perception. Usually it's very brief. Mind, consciousness, the sixth, also can perceive in the mode of direct perception. But it's very rare, very difficult, and probably takes a lot of training. So it's very difficult for mind to perceive without mental elaboration, and so this would be mind also without language. A little bit tricky, but possible. So mind, when it intervenes, it also discriminates. It says, it names very quickly. It's very hard. You may like to try as well. You walk around, try to look and see and feel without naming, without identifying. Tricky, but possible. But mind comes very quickly and says, this is a tree, maybe even which kind of tree, this is a nice tree, this is not a nice tree, I like this tree, I don't like this tree, all kinds of things start happening. And once we identify something as, say, flower, you also have the implicit statement of this is not a cloud, right? Flower is flower, cloud is cloud. These are different. That's mind, discriminating, chopping reality and experience into pieces with the sword of discrimination. So this is the first mode of perception. Then we have the mode of inference. Also deduction and induction. This is the mind that tells you when you see smoke, say, oh, there must be a fire. Right? So you don't see the fire, you see the smoke, and your mind sees fire. You have inferred from smoke the presence of fire. And we also do this all the time, and we do it very rapidly without noticing that we're doing it. There are two ways that we can use this mind of inference, which are either alone or collectively. So in the research community, we may be doing kind of collective inference. I make an inference, you make an inference, we check, we compare, we say, oh, okay, we agree, and we proceed. Again, I'm not necessarily bad, like this is good. And I would say most of scientific research happens with this mind, the mind of investigation, reasoning, inference, deduction. And really, it only has access to the historical dimension, this mind. But with some care, it might actually help to lead us to the ultimate dimension. Okay, so even at the beginning, looking with the eyes of interbeing is a kind of inference or deduction. I once asked Tai this question, because it kind of annoyed me, and I was a bit confused. When you talk about eating meditation, you chew the piece of carrot, and you see the field where it was planted, and you see the stars and the moon and the sun and the wind and the rain and the farmers and and I was like, but isn't that just my imagination, right? Aren't I just thinking? And I have to know those things in advance, right? I have to know about carrots and what they looked like in a field and how they were planted, and right. So I'm kind of using knowledge And what I wanted to know is that is there some mystical state of using the eyes of interbeing where you just see, boom, no knowledge, no inference, no deduction? The form of the question I asked Tai was like this, because Tai used to sometimes use the example of an orange tree. He said, when you see the orange, you see the tree. You look deeply into the orange and you see the tree. And you see the blossom, the orange blossom in the spring. So my question to Tai was, what if you've never seen an orange tree? Right? If you've never seen an orange tree and you look deeply into an orange, do you still see an orange tree? I want to know, is there magic, basically? Do you look at it? You know? Omniscience. Because that would be kind of cool. You look at things and just know. I see your true nature. And I wanted to know. So I asked Tai, is it this? You know, are you just saying, we're going to use things we already know about orange trees, and this only works if you've seen orange trees in books, in photos, in documentaries, in reality, and then you look deeply and you use your memory and your knowledge? No? Or is it magical, mystical, kapow? So what do you think Tai said? He actually said, keep practicing. Make of that what you will. So, in one sense, all this business of meditating that we're doing and all the practices that we're doing, all this interconnected ecology of practices that we offer you in the container of a retreat, is to learn to remove the mind of discrimination. Not to remove forever and never pick it up again, but it's like if the sword of discrimination is always in our hand, then all we get is pieces, right? We're just constantly cutting reality into pieces, and we cut ourselves. So we have to know when to put it down. Right? The mind of discrimination is not necessarily a bad thing. But let's not make it so that it's involuntary, or so that it's kind of a compulsion. We have to be able to have the option to put it down. I find that worth doing a lot of walking meditation for, and breathing, and all the other things. Not that we're instrumentalizing meditation, by the way. We have the third mode of cognition, which is fallacy. So, this is the mode of cognition of the seventh consciousness of Manas. Because it already assumes the existence of separate selves, it sees everything in terms of separate selves, and it's kind of always wrong. Not necessarily useless, but always wrong. And it can be wrong direct, or it can be wrong inference. So it's, you know, we have intuition, right? And sometimes we go, oh, you got to trust your gut, trust your intuition. Intuition can be wrong. It can also be right. But be careful. Just because you have a gut feeling doesn't make it true. Doesn't make it correct. If you take your gut feeling and then look at it with the eyes of self, or through the eyes of self, you may end up being very wrong. So be careful. But intuition can also be trained. Manas, the seventh consciousness, is this instinctive, unconscious identification with the body, primarily, with this is me, this is mine, my body, my feelings, my thoughts, my perceptions, my consciousness. It sees things in the terms of self-delusion, self-love. So it's basically like, this self is more important, I'm going to care about this one more, even if I hate it. Right? We can have self-loathing Do we need a new battery? I don't know. We can have self-loathing and self-love at the same time, if you haven't noticed. It has self-view. It sees everything in terms of self, not only itself, but everybody else and everything else. And it has self-conceit, which is basically like, look after number one. Right, take care of this first. This is more important. And we learned all the other characteristics, right? It always pleasure-seeking, pain-avoiding, ignoring the dangers of pleasure-seeking, ignoring the goodness of suffering, and ignoring the law of moderation. And it doesn't know how to use the eyes of interbeing, and it doesn't, and it sees in terms of permanence. It struggles with impermanence. So it has an image of reality, which is conditioned by this idea of self, this very instinctive, unconscious idea of self. So if you find yourself thinking in terms of permanence, in terms of duality, right, or in terms of self, then it's very nice because you can kind of go, oh, that's automatically wrong. So it kind of like that's, I think Sister Langnam was really helping us with that on the very first day. It's a very quick way to identify unhelpful thinking. So again, they're just signposts, but they are signposts that can help us discard certain paths of investigation or questions very quickly. We don't have to waste our time. And we're going to get to imagination, I promised, and visualization. And this is very interesting because Manas needs us to use imagination and visualization to help it let go of this cutting and discriminating and seeing things in terms of self. So these are the three modes, and then there are three realms. And here now we're really going to get in trouble because when I say three realms of perception, it really sounds like metaphysics. It really sounds like realm, like as in nature of reality, but it is a realm of perception. So we perceive in these three, in terms of three realms. And the first is suchness. So again, Tai here was borrowing from Western philosophy and from Kant. This is the thing in itself, das Ding an sich, la chose en soi. The thing in itself. And that means somehow there is a somethingness, there is an essence of things which is not their appearance. Right? Water, this is just a metaphor, okay? Be careful with this one too. Water can appear as a snowflake, or as a hailstone, or as a raindrop, or as mist. Different faces, different appearances, different names. The substance is the same. Just a metaphor, but maybe useful. So, in the realm of suchness, when we perceive in the mode of suchness, there is no duration, no time, and no space. This is tricky, because we usually see in terms of time and space. And what we learn from the tradition is that it is the mind that paints time and space onto this kind of point-instant perception. And it happens so quickly that we don't notice the point-instant direct perception. So Remember, the sense consciousness is operating with store directly without the intervention of mind. They work in this mode of direct perception, and in the mode of direct perception, what they perceive is suchness. But then mind intervenes very quickly and adds our assumptions of space and time. And so the mode of direct perception in the realm of suchness is mostly very brief. And we need to train our mind, because the mind can operate in the direct mode and can perceive suchness as well, but it takes a lot of training. It takes training not to paint space and time. And but maybe some of quantum physics is sort of pointing in this direction as well. That there appear to be phenomena which are somewhat non-local, such as entanglement, and maybe even non-temporal. Quantum erasers and there's all kinds of things where time no longer seems to apply in the usual sense. That events in the future seem to be able to condition events in the present or in the past, and it's seemingly very confusing if we believe rigidly in time and space. If we can suspend those beliefs, well, the maths tells us some interesting things. But even that, quantum physics, is just a model. So we shouldn't get attached to that either. Where are we? The realms. Yes, suchness. Then we have the realm of representations. So I have to go a little bit quickly because there's a lot of this stuff. Representations. So this is mostly where we hang out, and it's maybe the realm of predictive coding. We heard from Mark the other day about predictive processing, that the mind sees in terms of what it already knows, and it makes predictions based on past experiences as a way to optimize and to reduce glucose expenditure, basically. So it's cheaper for the mind to give you the apple of experience than to actually check and experience this apple of the present moment. But the result of that is that it comes at a cost, because the apple of experience is kind of washed out, it's kind of grey, it's kind of, I already know, it's the apple I already know, it's boring. Whereas the apple of this moment is totally unknown. It's the mystery. So if we only perceive in the mode of mental constructions and representations, or in the realm, the mode of inference and fallacy, which gives access to the realm of representations, then we only have, it's like a hall of mirrors. It's the matrix, living in the matrix. And we'd like to exit the matrix, maybe. Some people like to stay. So we have our ideas about the nature of reality, and then we experience reality in terms of those ideas. So you might have noticed that if you love somebody, right, you might have an idea about them. And you might be very attached to that idea. Or you build an image of them. And you fall in love with the image. Right? It's maybe love at first sight, and it all seems good. And then you live with them. Right? And then after a while, you're like, hang on. That's not what I signed up for. Where's that perfect image that I constructed? You fell in love with an image. But we want to fall in love with reality. So we need to be very careful of superimposing the realm of representations on our experience, or dwelling in the realm of representations. And it's hard because so much of our collective kind of consensus reality is built out of these mental constructions, representations, and particularly language. Right? And we use language a lot. We have names. And sometimes we get identified with our name. And then we have identity, and we get identified with our identity. I am a scientist. Right? I am from this country, from this town. I support this football team. Identity. A little bit dangerous, and we start to perceive the world in those terms. We may also have ideas and theories about the nature of reality, like the nature of elementary particles, atoms, electrons. They're ideas. And then you look at reality through the lens of those ideas. And maybe you only find confirmation of those ideas. Right? But what you start to see is the ideas, not the reality, because you don't know that the lenses have got into your way of perceiving. So we see, it's not that it's totally wrong, right? But we only see an aspect of reality, not the whole of reality. And I think as good scientists, we're probably interested in seeing reality. We have a third realm, which is the realm of mere images. And this is also imagination, dreams, so experiences that we've had that fall into store as a seed. Let's say you went to the zoo and you saw an elephant. Right? And in the night, you dream of an elephant. So in the night, Manas goes wandering around and goes for a visit into store, and it's like self-service. It's like, oh, okay. And it selects the image of an elephant, presents it to you, and you see an elephant, but it's a mere image. It's not an elephant. It's the image of an elephant. And we may also be perceiving reality in terms of mere images sometimes. And also not necessarily bad, like dreams and imagination are wonderful and important, both for scientists and artists. We need our imagination, and we're going to get to it. Okay, we could spend a lot more time. There's a lot more to say here, but let's just move on. There are also three... I think I need a bit more space. Three moral natures. I know you might react because I said moral. Just, just notice it, breathe, it'll be okay. So these are wholesome. And yes, you guessed it, unwholesome. And indeterminate. So it's not moral as in absolutely good or bad, right? According to this teaching, there is nothing absolutely good or bad. It is our mind that makes it so. It is our mind that makes it either helpful or unhelpful, wholesome or unwholesome. So let's see if we can sort of tie some of this together. We have the 5 or 8 sense consciousnesses. We have the mind consciousness, the 6th. Manas, 7th. And we have store, the 8th. So let's start with store consciousness. Store consciousness, in a sense, is seen as it's seen as nature. So again, be careful, because this really starts to sound like metaphysics. It is it's very hard to say this in any way that doesn't sound like metaphysics, but just take it and be careful. It's the field of all potentials. It is not manifest. It is not accessible to mind consciousness. It is not something that we can perceive directly, except maybe we can. But usually not. I'm sorry, I know, I'm not making it easy. But it isn't easy. But anyway, so its mode of operation is sort of spontaneous. It just does things, and in that sense it is morally indeterminate. It's not good or bad, it's just operating spontaneously. It is the field of all nature. But it is also unveiled. It sees things as they are. It is completely unobstructed by conceptual categories or mentation, imagination, speculation, inference, deduction, or any of those things. It just operates. And its mode of operation, or its moral nature, is indeterminate. Okay, not good, not bad. Its mode of perception is direct. And the field of perception, or the realm of perception, is suchness. So in the mode of direct perception, it experiences things exactly as they are. And it is morally indeterminate. And it is indeterminate, unveiled, no delusion, no discrimination. Then we have the seventh, manas, which we know is, in a sense, it's part of store. It's arisen from store, but it's born from seeds of delusion in store, seeds of the belief in a separate self. And based on that belief, it reaches down into store and identifies and holds on to a part of store. It's also called the lover. It reaches down and says, I love you. And what does it love? It loves itself. And it says, this is me. But its moral nature is also indeterminate. Right? It's not good or bad. It's just spontaneously doing its thing. That's just how it operates. It's not right or wrong. It's just how it is. It's indeterminate, but it's veiled. Veiled by the belief in a separate self. And this is indeterminate, unveiled. Okay, that's the eighth. The seventh is indeterminate morally, but veiled. So it has some delusion in it. And all it has access to, in terms of the mode of perception, is fallacy. It sees everything in terms of fallacy. And as a result, it only has access to the realm of representations. Okay? Because of the delusion of self, it sees in terms of self, which is not the true nature of things, only sees that. Then it gets more interesting. Let's go to the fifth, the 5 or 8 sense consciousnesses. They can operate either with or without mind. When they operate without mind, they are in the mode of direct perception, but it's not exactly the same as the direct perception of store. The direct perception of the sense consciousnesses, I would say, is direct, but in the realm of phenomena. So it's direct phenomenal, which means point, instant. Yes, so it still sees in terms of things, but without mental confabulation. Okay, so it's direct, but in the realm of phenomena. So maybe in the historical dimension. And the senses operate like this without the intervention of mind. And as such, yeah, so they have access because their mode of perception is direct when mind is not involved. So what they have access to is suchness, but it is the phenomenal suchness. So the suchness of phenomena. Right? And store consciousness also has access to the realm of suchness, but it is both phenomenal and it can touch the phenomenal suchness and the noumenal. Phenomenal and noumenal. Okay, if any of this is not clear, you have to wait about 18 months and you can read the book. And just to be clear, I didn't make any of this up. I got this straight from Tai, including this diagram. Okay, so so it may be better. You can also watch the video of Tai doing the same thing, and he'll do it a lot better. So the thing about the five sense consciousnesses, although their mode of perception can be direct when mind is not involved, and so they have access to phenomenal suchness, their moral nature can be wholesome, unwholesome, or indeterminate. So what does that mean? When they operate without the intervention of mind consciousness, it is indeterminate. It's just what it is. With mind consciousness, basically, it kind of depends what you're looking at, right? Whether it's wholesome or unwholesome, and what you make of it with your mind. So it's not only what you're looking at, but the way of looking at it, and what you think about it, and whether you get addicted to it or attached to it, whether you hate it, whether you love it, what stories your mind makes up about it. And it can either be wholesome and wholesome. Unwholesome is not also. Moral is a bit misleading because it sounds like it's some kind of absolute, like there are good things and there are bad things. That's not really the lens. The lens here is it helpful or unhelpful? So this question of the mind operating with the five sense consciousnesses is in a sense dealt with in the 5 mindfulness trainings, and particularly the 5th mindfulness training, which some of you received this morning, which is about what we choose to consume, whether it is helpful or unhelpful, beneficial or unbeneficial. Then we have mind, the 6th consciousness, and the realm of activity of the 6th is the largest, because it can operate in the mode of direct perception, although it is rare and it takes training. It can operate in the mode of inference and deduction, which is what we usually do. It can also operate in the mode of fallacy, which is a wrong inference or wrong intuition. And it does have access to suchness, although it is also somewhat rare. It has access, obviously, to the realm of representations, because that's usually where it hangs out. And it has access to the realm of mirror images. We can imagine things and visualize things, and that's very cool. And it also can be wholesome, unwholesome, or indeterminate. So its realm of activity is the greatest. It has access to everything. But mostly we use it in the mode of inference, in the realm of representation, and, well, wholesome, unwholesome, I don't know. That's up to you. So, does that help? I don't know. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just makes it worse, right? It could just confuse you. So, let's enjoy the sound of the bell. So we have to treat all of this with a little bit of care, because as I've said before, and I will keep on saying it, it does start to look a little bit like a description of the nature of reality, but remember, it is only intended as a map to help us navigate the problem of suffering in our experience as it arises. So it can maybe sometimes help us to know where we are and what we're up to and what's operating, and maybe how to practice to move from one way of perceiving to another way of perceiving. There's so much more we could say. But in the, let's just talk about imagination. So Tai said something very interesting, which is that we need our imagination, and we need our visualization to help Manas, the seventh consciousness, to let go, to help it start to make this trip into the, to help it to let go of seeing things in terms of separateness, seeing things in terms of self. So what can we do? It's interesting because in theory, like, the imagination is in the realm of mirror images. It's supposed to be sort of not real, right? But that's actually a habit of thought that arises on the basis of scientific materialism, okay? Because we have a tendency to think that this is real, right? Reality is matter, it is external, it is, physical and temporal. But that's just an assumption. In the realm of experience, why is an image not real? It's your experience. It's in the present moment. It's part of experience. So it isn't not real. That's just a habit. It's a hangover of scientific materialism. So this is what confused me when I asked Tai the question about, if you've never seen an orange tree, can you, and you look at an orange, can you see the tree? And then Tai said, keep practicing. So I asked the question unconsciously in terms of scientific materialism, because I thought, there is an orange now, it came from a tree then, somewhere, which I may or may not have seen, but it is separately existent, right? And not accessible to my mind unless I'm looking straight at it. Are you sure? Right? If it's something more like store consciousness, where everything is the arising of, the manifesting of seeds from the ground of store, manifesting simultaneously in terms of subject and object of perception, right, then those seeds at the level of store are not in space and they're not in time. They're not subject to birth or death, creation or destruction. It is always there, potential. So what if mind could just reach directly into store with imagination? Sometimes we appear to be, there are two kinds of mere image. One is with substance and one is without substance. This is in the teaching. So with substance is based on a thing that we have seen and experienced in normal waking consciousness. And without substance seems to be a kind of creation of the mind. So let's say you see in your dream a flying elephant. You've combined two images and you've made a new image. And obviously a lot of art and literature is wonderful and beautiful because we can seemingly create new things with our imagination. I also want to say the English language is a little bit unhelpful in this realm because it gives us only visualization, because we are a little bit obsessed with seeing, and we don't have a word for the same thing but with hearing. So I call it audialization, and this is what composers do. You hear things in this realm. But if you're a dancer, maybe you have kinesthetization, right? Or proprioceptization in motion. It's also a kind of imagination, but it's not an image, it's maybe a felt sense, then you can imagine the felt sense of moving through that sequence. Right? If you're a chef, you have gustatorization. You could probably find a better word, but it's like you can imagine before you've made it a new combination of ingredients. If you're a parfumier, you can do it with smells, or if you work with essential oils, you can imagine new combinations of essential oils. You can smell them before you've smelled them. It's kind of wild. Olfactorization, right? So maybe we need some new words. Obviously, artists make use of imagination a lot, but I think scientists do too, right? Because there's many, many things that we study in science that we can't see directly. If you're studying particle physics, most of what you study you can never see or touch, right? But you use imagination to visualize it, and then imagine the interactions, and that is wonderful and necessary. In the practice as a yogi or as a meditator, we also make use of visualization. We do it a lot. And maybe we are learning to communicate more directly with this ocean of potential. So let's say we're going to go for walking meditation. You can visualize and you can walk with your mother's feet. You can say, Maman, marche avec moi. And yeah, it's a little bit of visualization, but it becomes very real. So we use our visualization, our imagination, to shatter the illusion of our separateness. You can invite your mother, your father, all your ancestors, your teachers. You walk as a multitude. This is something you can experience. So it's, yes, a little bit of imagination, but you start to practice, and it becomes very real, something that you can feel. And it helps manas to let go. And there's many, many, many such practices. In the Mahayana Buddhist literature, there are some sutras that go very far into this. The Avatamsaka Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, they are really trippy. You know, it's like you sit on the lotus flower of 1,000 petals, and in each petal there's another flower of 1,000 petals, and in each petal of the 1,000 petals there's another, you know, it's like, you know, fractal madness. So it's partly visualization, but it's visualization which gives us access, gives us freedom from the apparent solidity and separateness of things that manas perceives in terms of. So I had trouble when I first encountered this business of seeds and store, because I immediately, and I think I said this the other day, I went about trying to locate it, saying, okay, fine, so if you're saying that's the ultimate nature of reality, then where is it? How can I touch it? Can we measure it? Wrong questions. So maybe a better thought is like, how can I leave it alone? How can I not grasp it with my concepts? It makes us as teachers a little bit hesitant to say anything about it, because whatever we say, we know is not it. Nevertheless, I'm going to say something, and maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not. So I'm a musician, and I sometimes like to think in terms of music. So I could take a piece of music that I love, let's say, a Mozart string quintet, and you could choose a song that you like, or something that means something to you. And you ask yourself, so let's take this, or maybe something more universal, like, I don't know, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Does everybody know that? Da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and so on, right? You know that one? Between performances, where is it? Okay, so the Berlin Philharmonic just played it. Vienna Philharmonic's going to play it next week. Where is it now? Does it exist? Does it not exist? Is it in collective consciousness? Partly. Before Beethoven wrote it, where was it? Did it exist? Did it not exist? Right? Maybe the terms of the question are misleading, because we tend to think in terms of existence or non-existence. But let's just suppose that, for the sake of argument, there was a Big Bang. I don't know if there was or not, right? And I think astrophysicists are actually increasingly unsure. There was a time when that was the consensus, still somewhat the consensus, but there are some competing theories, competing interpretations of the observations. It's not necessarily clear, but let's suppose that there was. There's a Big Bang, which implies space, time, and I would say consciousness. Not everybody would agree. But let's say you have space, time, and consciousness. So you forget about the Big Bang, doesn't matter. Once you have space, time, and consciousness, all kinds of things are possible, right? Including the note B flat, right? The note B flat is suddenly a possible vibration of space, right? The note B flat, including all its harmonics. B flat, an octave above, 2 octaves above, 3 octaves above, an octave and a fifth, right? An octave and 2 octaves and a third, and a fifth, and a minor seventh, and so on. Right? All the harmonics are possible vibrations of a space of air or matter or string or whatever it might be. Once you have space, time, and consciousness, that frequency is possible. Double that frequency is possible. Triple that frequency is possible. They're all possible. So by extension, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony is possible. Right? Once you have space, time, and consciousness, it's possible. It's possible to assemble those frequencies in that order, with those harmonies, with those timbres. It is possible. So what if there is a space of all the possible possibles? Right? Including pieces of music, including human beings, including feelings, including mountains and galaxies and dewdrops. All the possible possibles are possible. Right? Some of them are manifest. They're all possible. And as possible possibles, let's come back to Beethoven's Fifth, between the two performances, between Berlin Phil and Vienna. Where is it? Nobody's playing it. Maybe nobody even's playing a recording. That's probably quite unusual these days, but say all the CD players, all the, suddenly maybe Spotify deletes it accidentally, it goes off all the playlists, nobody's playing it, nobody's listening to it. Where is it? Did it disappear? Did it go away? No, it's still possible. It's just not manifest, but it's possible. It didn't die. It didn't go away. Because the possible, the potential, cannot be destroyed. Nobody can touch it. Tai used to use the example of a flame. He would light a match, and then the match would go out. But when the flame is extinguished, are flames no longer possible? Is that the end of all flames? No. They're still possible. They're just not manifest. Right? But if you're a chemist, you know very well that a flame is just a kind of dynamical system, right, of some kind of fuel with oxygen combusting in an exothermic reaction. The kind of dynamic exothermic reaction that draws in the oxygen it needs to continue. It's a dynamical system, and as a dynamical system, it is always possible. So in the realm of the possible, nothing is created, nothing is destroyed. There is no time, no locality, no coming or going, no same, no different. Just all the possibles, all simultaneously sort of vibrating. Maybe it's a realm of frequency. A field. We like to think about fields. Usually we think of physical fields, so fields instantiated in space and time, so like an electromagnetic field, or a field of charge, or a field of magnetic charge. And then we have quantum fields, which are not physical fields, right? They're fields of probability, which may be a little bit closer. This is a field of all the fields. Not in space, not in time. It really sounds like metaphysics. This is why I should keep my mouth shut. So I just say it in the hope that it might point in the direction of a kind of experience of freedom, of non-fear. Because you and I are like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. As soon as there was space, time, and consciousness, we were also possible, and we were always possible, and we will always be possible. And there is no separate we, right? So possible also in all our multiple interactions, because maybe it's in the interactions that are more the space of the possible than the apparent separate entities which Manas invents. So you can even think of the possible as being in what lies between us, the realm of relationships. And what is Beethoven's Fifth Symphony if not a complex of relationships, of sound? It's not really an entity, it's not a thing. It's also the relationship of your consciousness to it. Without the listener, there's no symphony. So I just propose this as an instrument of imagination. Okay? I'm not describing reality. I'm just saying we can use our imagination to kind of visualize this vast space. Sometimes at one point I visualized it as it's like a giant cathedral with all these tuning forks hanging. All possible frequencies. And life is a kind of dance, brushing against all these different tuning forks, and they resonate and they cause each other to resonate, and the patterns of resonance ripple out and interact. And there's other resonances and dances happening at the same time, and it's this vast music of us. Not subject to birth and death. Always possible. I wrote something down here, I have no idea what it says. Okay, that's a sign. Enough. So let's not take any of this too seriously. Let's not hold on to it too tight. Let's not make more theories out of it, even though we love making theories. And any theories we appear to have, you can just also let those go too. And I invite you to see what you can experience. How maybe you can use some of these notions to also challenge the categories of experience that appear to you in the mind and the questions that arise based on those categories. As soon as you think, oh, I need to ask Brother Phap Linh a question, check. Right? Are you thinking in terms of self? Are you thinking in terms of permanence? Right? Are you thinking in terms of separateness? Are you thinking in terms of dualism? You can do a quick check and say, oh yeah, okay, I don't need to ask. And we'll save a lot of time. Let's enjoy 3 sounds of the bell.